The Manhattan skyline glittered beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse, a view that had once taken Emily Bennett Carter's breath away. Now, 5 years later, those same lights seemed to mock her, their cold brilliance reflecting the emptiness of her marriage to one of New York's most powerful men. Emily's hands trembled as she placed the pregnancy test on Liam's mahogany desk, right next to her wedding ring. The ring's diamond caught the city lights, throwing prisms across the stark white envelope beside it. Inside that envelope was a letter she'd rewritten 17 times, trying to find the right words to say goodbye to a man who had never really seen her at all. The grandfather clock in the hallway struck midnight, its deep resonance echoing through the silent penthouse. Emily closed her eyes, remembering the countless nights she'd waited up for Liam, hoping that maybe this time he'd look at her with something other than cold indifference. "Mrs. Carter?" Rosa, their housekeeper, appeared in the doorway. Her weathered face was etched with concern. "The car is waiting downstairs." Emily nodded, gathering her courage. "Thank you, Rosa, for everything." The older woman stepped forward, pressing a small package into Emily's hands. "Your favorite tea, for the morning sickness." Her eyes were warm with understanding. "Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is walk away." Tears threatened, but Emily blinked them back. She'd cried enough in this house. Taking a deep breath, she smoothed down her simple black dress, so different from the designer clothes Liam insisted she wear to his corporate events. Tonight, she wasn't Liam Carter's trophy wife. She was just Emily, a woman choosing herself and her unborn child over a marriage that existed only on paper. The memory of last week's charity gala surfaced, sharp and painful. Liam's voice, cutting through a group of investors. "My wife, she's quite decorative, isn't she? Though I'm afraid that's the extent of her contributions." The polite laughter that followed. The way he'd dismissed her attempt to discuss a charitable initiative with a patronizing pat on her hand. That night, like so many others, she'd locked herself in their marble bathroom, pressing her fists against her mouth to muffle her sobs. But this time was different. This time, she'd felt the first flutter of nausea that would lead her to buy a pregnancy test. Emily moved through the penthouse one last time, her practical flat silent on the hardwood floors. So different from the click of the heels Liam required her to wear, even at home. "Appearance is everything," he'd say, his tone making it clear she was part of that appearance, nothing more. In their bedroom, she paused. The king-sized bed was immaculate, untouched on Liam's side. He rarely came home before midnight, and when he did, he usually slept in the guest room. "I have early meetings," he'd say, as if sharing a bed with his wife was an inconvenience he couldn't afford. The walk-in closet held 5 years of designer clothes, each piece chosen to meet Liam's exacting standards. She took nothing but a small suitcase of the clothes she'd hidden away, simple, comfortable things that felt like her. The real her, not the porcelain doll Liam had tried to shape her into. In the kitchen, she ran her fingers along the marble countertop where she'd tried countless times to cook him breakfast, only to have him brush past with his protein shake and tablet. Too busy for such domestic trivialities. The dining room table where they'd sat in silence on the rare occasions he was home for dinner, his attention fixed on his phone. The elevator arrived with a soft chime. Emily stepped inside, her suitcase light despite the weight of the decisions it represented. As the doors closed, she caught a final glimpse of the life she was leaving behind. The crystal vases filled with flowers she wasn't allowed to arrange herself, the abstract sculptures chosen by Liam's interior designer, the photographs of their perfect life that told nothing but lies. The night doorman Miguel looked up as she crossed the lobby. Recognition flickered in his eyes, followed by understanding. He'd seen her cry too many times in the garden when she thought no one was watching. "Take care of yourself, Mrs. Carter," he said softly, holding the door open. "It's Bennett now," she replied, managing a small smile. "Just Emily Bennett." The black town car waited at the curb, its engine purring quietly in the mild spring night. Her uncle's most trusted driver, Wade, stood ready to whisk her away to the private airfield where a plane would take her home to Texas. to the sprawling ranch where she'd grown up believing in love and happy endings. As the car pulled away from the curb, Emily didn't look back at the towering buildings she'd called home. Instead, she pressed a hand to her still flat stomach where new life grew, a life she would protect from the cold emptiness that had characterized her marriage. "You'll never feel unloved," she whispered to her child. "I promise." The city. Lights blurred as tears finally fell, but they weren't tears of sadness. For the first time in 5 years, Emily Bennett Carter felt something she'd almost forgotten: hope. Somewhere above her, in his pristine office, Liam Carter worked late, into the night, unaware that his perfectly ordered world was about to crumble. By the time he found her letter, Emily would be halfway to Texas, leaving behind a man who had everything money could buy but had never learned the value of a heart freely given. The car merged onto the highway, carrying Emily toward a future that was uncertain, but entirely her own. Behind her, Manhattan's glittering towers receded, their lights no longer mocking, but releasing her from their cold embrace. She was going home. Not to the mansion in the sky that had been her prison, but to the wide-open spaces of Texas, where the morning sun painted the horizon in colors Liam would never appreciate, and where she could finally remember who she was, before she became Mrs. Carter. In her pocket, her phone buzzed. Probably another demanding message from Liam's assistant about tomorrow's schedule of social obligations. Emily pulled out the device and, without looking at the screen, powered it off. Tomorrow's schedule didn't matter anymore. Tomorrow, she would wake up free. Liam Carter didn't notice anything amiss when he first entered the penthouse at 3 a.m. The silence was normal. He preferred it that way. Preferred not having to engage in pointless small talk about his day or listen to his wife's attempts at meaningful conversation. His Ferragamo shoes clicked against the hardwood floors as he made his way to his office, tablet in hand, mind still consumed with the merger he'd been orchestrating for the past 18 hours. The deal would add another billion to his empire. That's what mattered. That's what had always mattered. The first sign that something was different came when he pushed open his office door. A faint scent of jasmine, Emily's perfume, lingered in the air. She never came in here. It was an unspoken rule, like so many others in their carefully ordered life. "What were you doing in my office?" he muttered, irritation creeping into his voice even though she wasn't there to hear it. Then he saw them: the ring, the envelope, and something else he couldn't quite make out in the dim light. His hand found the switch, flooding the room with harsh fluorescent brightness. The diamond ring, the one he'd chosen because it was the most impressive, not because it suited her delicate hand, lay cold and lifeless on his desk. Beside it, a pristine white envelope bore his name in Emily's elegant handwriting. And, next to that, Liam's breath caught. A pregnancy test. "Ridiculous," he scoffed, but his usually steady hands shook slightly as he reached for the envelope. Emily was prone to dramatic gestures. Last month, she'd threatened to redecorate their formal dining room with warm, homey touches. He'd shut that down immediately. The room, like everything else in his life, was perfect as it was. The letter opener sliced through expensive paper with surgical precision. Inside, 3 pages of Emily's handwriting awaited him. He began to read, his trademark smirk fading with each word. "Liam, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. Not just for a day or a week, but forever. I've spent 5 years trying to turn this marriage into something real, something warm and living. But you can't warm up a statue, can you? And that's what you are, beautiful, perfect, and completely cold. I used to dream about the day you'd look at me and really see me, not as an accessory or an obligation, but as a woman who loved you despite your cruel words and colder silences. I imagined you'd realize that success isn't measured in billions but in moments of genuine connection. But last week, at the gala, when you dismissed me in front of everyone, again, I finally understood. You're not capable of change because you don't want to change. You're comfortable in your fortress of wealth and indifference. I could have endured it, Liam. I have endured it. But now there's someone else to consider." Liam's eyes darted to the pregnancy test. positive. The word blazed up at him like an accusation. I'm carrying your child, but I won't let them grow up thinking love is a weakness and warmth is a flaw. I won't let them learn that success means sacrificing every genuine emotion on the altar of appearance. Don't try to find me. Your money and influence won't reach where I'm going. Consider this my gift to you, freedom from the burden of pretending to be a husband. You can finally be exactly what you've always wanted, completely alone with your empire. Emily. The letter crumpled in his fist. A strange sensation spread through his chest. Unfamiliar, uncomfortable. Was this panic? Richardson. He barked into his phone, not caring that it was nearly 4 a.m. His head of security answered on the first ring. Find my wife now. Sir? Richardson's voice was cautious. Mrs. Carter's phone appears to be turned off. Her credit cards haven't been used since yesterday afternoon. The last security camera footage shows her leaving the building at midnight in a black town car. Liam's jaw clenched. Find the car. We're trying, sir, but it's registered to a private company. They're not responding to our inquiries. Make them respond. The words exploded from him with unexpected force. In the ensuing silence, he could hear his own ragged breathing. Yes, sir. Right away. Liam ended the call and stood, moving to the window. The city sprawled before him, his domain where his word was law and his power absolute. Somewhere out there, Emily was slipping through his fingers like smoke. He caught his reflection in the glass. Impeccable suit, perfect hair, features arranged in their usual mask of control. But his eyes... There was something wrong with his eyes. Moving through the penthouse, he found himself in their bedroom. Her closet door stood open, designer dresses still hanging in perfect order. But the casual clothes she wore at home, the ones he always criticized, were gone. In the bathroom, her favorite vanilla lotion was missing from the counter. The simple silver necklace her grandmother had given her, the one he told her wasn't appropriate for a Carter, was gone from its usual place by the sink. Each absence felt like a physical blow. He'd never noticed how much space she occupied until she'd taken herself out of it. The kitchen still held traces of her morning routine. The expensive coffee maker he'd never learned to use, the delicate teacup she'd left in the dish rack. She'd tried to make him breakfast every morning for the first year of their marriage. He'd never once sat down to eat it. His phone buzzed. Richardson again. The car company is owned by Robert Bennett. Liam's teeth ground together. Her uncle, the Texas rancher who'd looked at him with barely concealed contempt at their wedding. Get me everything on Bennett. Properties, business dealings, everything. Already done, sir. He owns a ranch outside Austin, 10,000 acres, very private. Local law enforcement is uncooperative with outsiders. Of course, she'd gone home, to the sprawling ranch where she'd grown up, where she'd been Emily Bennett, the woman who smiled easily and believed in love. Before he'd turned her into Mrs. Carter, who learned to hide her tears and silence her dreams. Get the jet ready. Sir, it's the middle of the night. Now. Alone again, Liam returned to his office. The pregnancy test seemed to mock him from his pristine desk. A child. His child. Growing inside the woman who'd finally had enough of his perfect, empty world. For the first time in decades, Liam Carter felt something crack in his carefully constructed armor. It wasn't quite pain. He'd forgotten how to feel that long ago, but it was discomfort, unease. A gnawing sensation that whispered he'd finally gone too far, pushed too hard, lost something precious he hadn't known he wanted to keep. Dawn was breaking over Manhattan as his driver sped him toward the private airfield. Emily was out there carrying his child, believing him incapable of love. She was wrong. She had to be wrong. Wasn't she? Dawn painted the Texas sky in shades of pink and gold as Emily's Uncle Robert's truck rumbled down the familiar dirt road toward Bennett Ranch. The ancient pickup's windows were rolled down, letting in the sweet morning air that smelled of grass and freedom. So different from the sterile, climate-controlled atmosphere of her Manhattan prison. You doing okay there, sweetheart?" Uncle Robert's weathered face creased with concern as he glanced her way. He'd been waiting at the private airfield when her plane landed, wrapping her in a bear hug that smelled of leather and sunshine. Emily managed to smile, one hand resting protectively over her stomach. "I'm better now." The words came out stronger than she expected. "I just need some time to remember who you are," he finished, nodding sagely. "Well, there's no better place for that than home." The ranch house appeared around the bend, its wraparound porch and whitewashed walls exactly as she remembered. Her childhood home stood proud against the rising sun, solid and real in a way the Manhattan penthouse had never been. Aunt Ruby burst out the screen door before the truck even stopped, her silver hair escaping its braid, apron dusted with flour. "Land's sake, girl, you're thin as a rail. What's that man been feeding you, air and caviar?" The laugh that bubbled up from Emily's chest surprised her. When was the last time she'd really laughed? Ruby's famous buttermilk biscuits would fix. "That right up," she said, climbing down from the truck. "Already in the oven, sugar." Ruby enveloped her in a flour-dusted hug, along with your favorite blackberry preserves from last summer's harvest. Emily's eyes filled with tears. In the penthouse, meals were carefully planned by nutritionists and prepared by private chefs. Liam insisted on a strict diet. Appearances matter in our circle, darling. And the joy of simple comfort food had become just another sacrifice on the altar of his expectations. "Now don't you worry about a thing," Ruby continued, steering her toward the house. "Your room's all ready, just like you left it. Though we might need to make some changes soon." Her eyes dropped meaningfully to Emily's stomach. "You told them?" Emily looked at her uncle, who was carrying her small suitcase up the porch steps. "Didn't have to," he replied. "Your aunt's got a sixth sense about these things. Plus, you've got that glow about you." Inside, the house wrapped around her like a warm blanket. The familiar scent of coffee and baked goods mixed with furniture polish and fresh flowers from Ruby's garden. The antique grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 7, so different from the modern monstrosity in the penthouse that had counted down the hours of her imprisonment. "Breakfast first," Ruby declared, "then rest. Dr. Reynolds is coming by this afternoon to check on you." "Ruby, I don't need—" "Don't argue with your aunt, girl." Uncle Robert's tone was gentle but firm. "Let us take care of you for a while." In the kitchen, sunlight streamed through gingham curtains Emily had helped Ruby sew when she was 12. The oak table, scarred and beautiful with decades of family meals, bore no resemblance to the cold marble and glass dining set Liam had imported from Italy. Ruby set a plate of warm biscuits in front of her, along with eggs from their own chickens and thick-cut bacon from the Miller farm down the road. Simple food, made with love. Emily took a bite and nearly cried at the burst of flavor. "When's the last time you had a proper meal?" Ruby's sharp eyes missed nothing. "Liam has had very specific ideas about appropriate food choices." The words came out more bitter than she intended. "Well, that man isn't here to starve you anymore." Ruby's tone could have stripped paint. "You're eating for 2 now, and I aim to see you both properly fed." As if on cue, a wave of morning sickness rolled through Emily. She pressed a hand to her mouth, but Ruby was already there with fresh ginger tea, an old family remedy. "Small sips," she instructed. "Your mama swore by this when she was carrying you." The mention of her mother, gone 10 years now, brought fresh tears. "I wish she was here." "Oh, sugar." Ruby stroked her hair. "She is. In every sunrise over those fields, every wild rose in the garden, every bit of strength you found to leave that cold-hearted man. Catherine Bennett didn't raise a daughter to accept less than real love." The screen door creaked, and Uncle Robert came in with an armful of fresh eggs. "Got the hands working on fixing up the old cottage by the creek," he announced. "Thought you might like your own space once you're settled." Emily remembered the cottage, a charming 2-bedroom structure where the ranch foreman used to live. "You don't have to. Already decided?" He set the eggs down and kissed the top of her head. "Besides, gives me something to do besides worry about you." A truck engine rumbled in the distance. Through the window, Emily saw dust rising from the road. Her heart seized. Was it Liam? Had he found her already? That'll be Miguel with the morning feed, Ruby said, noting her panic. And don't you worry about that husband of yours showing up here. Your uncle's got the whole county on alert. Nobody gets within 10 miles of this ranch without us knowing. Emily relaxed slightly, but the fear lingered. Liam Carter wasn't a man who accepted defeat. When he found her letter and the pregnancy test, "He'll come," she said quietly. "When he realizes, let him." Uncle Robert's voice held steel. "This isn't Manhattan where his money talks and his name opens doors. This is Bennett land, has been for 5 generations. Here a man's worth is measured by the size of his heart, not his bank account." Emily nodded, but her hands shook slightly as she reached for her tea. She'd seen Liam destroy people who opposed him, crush competitors who dared to challenge his authority. The thought of him bringing that ruthless determination here to this peaceful place. "Stop that right now." Ruby's voice cut through her spiraling thoughts. "You're not alone anymore, Emily Rose Bennett. You've got family, you've got a whole community behind you, and most importantly, you've got that little one to think about." She nodded toward Emily's stomach. "Time to let us help you be strong." The morning breeze carried the scent of Ruby's roses through the open window, along with the distant lowing of cattle and the cheerful barking of the ranch dogs. This was real, Emily realized. Not the artificial perfection of her Manhattan life, but the messy, beautiful reality of home. "I need to learn how to be me again," she said softly. "Not Mrs. Carter, not Liam's perfect society wife, just Emily." "Well, there's plenty of time for that." Ruby set a jar of honey on the table. "And plenty of work to keep your hands busy while your heart heals. The garden needs tending, the books need updating, and I seem to recall you were quite the baker before that man decided it wasn't proper for his wife to have flour on her hands." Emily's fingers itched to sink into garden soil, to knead bread, dough to do all the simple things Liam had deemed beneath her station. "I'd like that." Then it settled. Ruby poured more tea. "You rest today, get checked out by Doc Reynolds, and tomorrow we'll start bringing Emily Bennett back to life." Outside, the Texas sun climbed higher, warming the land that had nurtured generations of strong Bennett women. Emily felt something unfurling in her chest. Not quite peace, not yet, but the possibility of it. Here, surrounded by love and understanding, she could finally breathe. But even as she let the comfort of home wrap around her, a small voice whispered that the real battle was yet to come. Liam would find her, and when he did, she would need every ounce of newly rediscovered strength to stand her ground. For now, though she had biscuits and blackberry preserves, the love of family, and the first fragile shoots of hope taking root in her heart, it would have to be enough. The sleek private jet touched down at Austin Bergstrom International Airport just as the Texas sun reached its peak. Liam Carter emerged into the punishing heat, his bespoke suit already feeling oppressive. His driver hastily arranged by his local office where waited with a luxury SUV, but Liam could tell from the man's uncertain expression that this wouldn't be like Manhattan. "The Bennett Ranch, sir?" The driver, Dean, shifted uncomfortably. Well, it's a bit complicated." Liam's jaw tightened. "Everything has a price, find it. With all due respect, Mr. Carter, things work differently here." Dean chose his words carefully. "The Bennetts they're kind of local royalty, old money, older land, and they protect their own. I'm not here for a cultural lesson." Liam's voice could have frozen the Texas heat. "I'm here for my wife." The drive took them through increasingly rural landscapes, Manhattan's familiar skyline replaced by endless fields and scattered farmhouses. Liam's phone signal grew weaker until it disappeared entirely. He felt his control slipping with each mile. An hour into the drive, they approached a small town. The sign read, "Welcome to Cedar Creek, population 2,847. Dean pulled into a local diner. "We should stop here first," he suggested. "Get some local insight." Liam wanted to refuse, but his usual tactics were useless without cell service. He followed Dean into Bell's diner. immediately feeling every eye in the place turn toward him. The conversations didn't stop, but they shifted. His Italian leather shoes and tailored suit might as well have been a neon sign reading "Outsider." Behind the counter, a woman in her 60s studied him with knowing eyes. "You must be Liam Carter," she said as he approached. Her name tag read, "Betty." "Figured you'd show up sooner or later." Liam's practiced smile did nothing to warm her expression. "Then you know why I'm here." "I know you're looking for Emily Bennett." She emphasized the last name. "I also know you'd do better to turn around and head back to whatever big city you came from." "She's my wife." "A piece of paper doesn't make someone yours." Betty's voice carried, meant to be heard. 5 years of treating her like she was nothing. That's what makes her not yours anymore. Anger flared in Liam's chest. "You don't know anything about my marriage. We know enough." A man at the counter turned toward them. His weathered face had seen decades of sun. "We know every time that girl came home to visit, she was a little more broken, a little more quiet, until she wasn't our Emily anymore." "Your Emily?" Liam's laugh was cold. "She's Emily Carter, my wife, and she's carrying my child." The diner went silent. Real silence this time. Betty's eyes narrowed. "So that's what brought you running. Not love, not concern, just your precious legacy. I don't have to explain myself to you." Liam turned to leave but found his path blocked by 2 large men in ranch wear. "Actually, you do." The taller one spoke softly. "See, Emily's family. Not by blood, but by something stronger. We watched her grow up. Watched her fall in love. With a man who promised her the world but gave her a cage instead." "Move," Liam commanded, using the tone that made CEOs tremble. Neither man budged. "Your money's no good here," the other man said. "Your name doesn't mean anything. And until you understand that, you're not getting anywhere near that girl." Dean cleared his throat from the doorway. "Mr. Carter, maybe we should—" "Fine." Liam straightened his jacket. "I'll find her myself." "Good luck with that." Betty's voice followed him out. "Every road to the Bennett Ranch goes through people who love Emily, and none of us are for sale." Back in the SUV, Liam's carefully controlled facade cracked slightly. He pulled out his phone. Still no signal. "There's another route," Dean offered hesitantly. "Longer, but just drive." They took back roads, passing scattered houses, and endless fences. Each mile felt like moving further from civilization, from the world Liam understood and controlled. Finally, they approached a massive iron gate. The sign read, "Bennett Ranch, Estier 1875" in weathered letters. 2 armed men on horseback watched their approach. Liam stepped out of the SUV, ignoring the dust on his shoes. "I'm here to see my wife." "Mr. Carter." The older of the 2 riders nodded. "We've been expecting you. Mr. Bennett would like a word first." "I don't have time for—" "Make time." The second rider's hand rested casually on his holstered gun. "Or make tracks. Your choice." For the first time in years, Liam felt genuinely powerless. No amount of money or influence could move these men. They operated on a different currency: loyalty, tradition, family. "Fine," he gritted out. "Take me to Bennett." They were escorted through the gate and up a winding road. The ranch house appeared, impressive in its own way, though nothing like the luxury Emily had left behind. On the wraparound porch, Robert Bennett waited in a rocking chair, a shotgun across his lap. "Took you longer than I expected," Robert said as Liam approached. "Got lost in civilization, did you?" "Where is she?" "Safe." Robert's eyes were hard. "Happy for the first time in years, and you're not going to change that." "She's carrying my child." "So it is the baby you're here for." Robert stood, his height matching Liam's. "Not the woman you broke piece by piece. Not the heart you froze out. Just your heir. You don't understand. No, you don't understand." Robert's voice cut like a whip. "Emily isn't just some trophy you can claim. She's a Bennett. Always has been, always will be. And on this land, that means something. I have rights." "Rights?" Robert laughed, but there was no humor in it. Let me tell you about rights, boy. That girl had the right to be loved, to be respected, to be treated like a human being instead of a decoration. You threw away your rights when you threw away her heart. Liam's fists clenched. I'll take this to court. Go ahead. Robert gestured to the vast ranch around them. Spend your millions, pull your strings, but remember, every judge, every lawyer, every person with any power in this county has known Emily since she was born. They've watched what you did to her. How do you think that'll play out? The truth of it hit Liam like a physical blow. Here, in this place, he was nothing. His power meant nothing. His name meant nothing. I want to see her, he said finally, his voice losing its edge. No. Robert's response was immediate. Not today. Not until she's ready, and maybe not even then. You can't keep her from me forever. Watch me. Robert sat back down, settling the shotgun across his lap again. Now you've got two choices. You can turn around and go back to your towers and your empty life. Or you can prove you're more than the heartless bastard who broke my niece. Prove it how? Figure it out. Robert's eyes were calculating. If you really want Emily, not just your child, not just your image, but Emily herself, then show us who you are without your money, without your power. Show us the man she thought she married. And if I don't? Then the next time you come on my land uninvited, you'll find out just how serious we are about protecting our own. The sun was setting as Dean drove them back toward Austin, painting the sky in colors Liam had never noticed before. He looked down at his expensive suit, his imported shoes, all the trappings of power that meant nothing here. For the first time in his adult life, Liam Carter felt completely lost. The carefully constructed walls of his world were crumbling, and in their ruins, he faced an uncomfortable question. Who was he without his empire? More importantly, who did he need to become to win back the woman who had finally stopped waiting for him to love her? 3 days into her new life at Bennett Ranch, Emily woke to the sound of roosters instead of traffic. Her old bedroom remained unchanged. Cheerful yellow walls, handmade quilt, and photographs of a smiling girl who believed in happy endings. She touched her still flat stomach, whispering a quiet good morning to the life growing inside her. Your daddy's in town, Ruby announced over breakfast, watching Emily carefully. Betty from the diner called. Said he came storming in yesterday like he owned the place. Emily's hands trembled slightly as she set down her teacup. How did he seem? Like a man who just discovered his money can't buy everything. Ruby's tone softened. Your uncle dealt with him. Made it clear you're not seeing anyone until you're good and ready. Relief and anxiety warred in Emily's chest. Part of her had hoped Liam wouldn't come at all, that she meant so little to him he'd simply let her go. Another part, the part that still remembered why she'd fallen in love with him, had prayed he'd prove her wrong. I need to keep busy, Emily declared, standing up. The cottage still needs work, right? Ruby nodded approvingly. Miguel and the boys got the basic repairs done, but it needs a woman's touch. Though you're not to lift anything heavy in your condition. The cottage by the creek had always been Emily's favorite spot on the ranch. As a girl, she dreamed of living there someday, making it her own little paradise. Now, as she walked, the familiar path, those dreams felt both painful and healing. The morning air was thick with humidity, so different from Manhattan's artificial climate control. Emily had changed into old jeans and one of her father's plaid shirts, clothes Liam would have sneered at. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, her face bare of the expensive makeup he'd insisted she wear. Inside the cottage, sunshine streamed through freshly washed windows. The men had done good work. New floorboards where needed, fresh paint on the walls, updated plumbing. But it still needed something more, something that would make it home. Need some help? Lucia, the ranch cook's daughter and Emily's childhood friend, stood in the doorway. Her dark eyes held understanding rather than pity. I'd love some. Emily managed a genuine smile. Though I warn you, I'm out of practice with actual work. 5 years of being decorative doesn't build many skills. Good thing some skills never leave you. Lucia set down a box of cleaning supplies. Remember when we used to help my mama clean the bunkhouse? You were the best at making old things shine. Together they opened windows, scrubbed surfaces, and arranged the furniture Uncle Robert had brought over from storage. Each task felt like reclaiming a piece of herself. He's staying at the Cedar Creek Inn, Lucia mentioned casually as they hung curtains. Your husband. Half the town's watching him, reporting back to your uncle. Emily's hands stilled on the fabric. What's he doing? Nothing, mostly. Sits in his fancy rental car with his fancy phone that doesn't work out here. Looks lost. Lucia paused. He's different than I expected, less powerful, Emily supplied. That's because his power doesn't work here. No networks to manipulate, no people to intimidate, no money to throw around. Is that why you fell in love with him, the power? Emily sat heavily in the window seat, memories washing over her. No, I fell in love with the man I thought I saw underneath all that. There were moments, tiny cracks in his armor, when he seemed almost human, almost capable of love. But they were just moments. They got rarer and rarer until... Emily touched her stomach again. Until I realized I couldn't let my child grow up thinking that's what love looks like. A truck engine rumbled outside. Both women tensed, but it was just Doc Reynolds arriving for Emily's checkup. The older woman bustled in with her medical bag, shooing Lucia out with a knowing smile. Let's see how Mama and Baby are doing, shall we? The examination was thorough but gentle. Doc Reynolds had delivered Emily and most of the children in the county. Her weathered hands were competent and kind. Blood pressure's a bit high, she noted. Not surprising given the stress, but we'll need to watch that. She patted Emily's hand. This little one's going to need you strong and healthy. I know, Emily bit her lip. But with Liam here... Listen to me, girl. Doc Reynolds fixed her with a stern look. That man had 5 years to be worthy of you. He failed. You don't owe him anything. Not your time, not your peace of mind, and certainly not your health. But the baby needs a mother who knows her own worth. The doctor began packing up her supplies. Now I want you resting when it's hot, eating properly and staying away from anything that raises your blood pressure, including certain billionaires who shall remain nameless. Emily laughed despite herself. Yes, ma'am. After Doc Reynolds left, Emily continued working on the cottage. Each small decision, where to place a lamp, which pictures to hang, felt like an act of rebellion against the controlled perfection of her life with Liam. Around noon, Ruby appeared with lunch and news. Your husband tried to come up to the ranch again. Your uncle sent him packing. Emily's sandwich turned to ash in her mouth. He won't give up, will he? No. Ruby's voice was gentle. But that's not your problem anymore. Your only job is taking care of yourself and that baby. Late afternoon found Emily on the cottage's small porch, watching thunderclouds gather. Over the distant hills, the air was electric with coming rain, real weather, not the sanitized version that reached Manhattan's heights. Her phone lay silent on the table beside her. She'd turned it back on briefly, only to find hundreds of messages from Liam's lawyers, his assistant, his social secretary, none from him directly. Even now he worked through intermediaries. A flash of lightning illuminated the countryside. In its brief glare, Emily saw a familiar black SUV passing slowly along the distant road that bordered the ranch. Her heart clenched. He's out there, she whispered to her unborn child. But he can't reach us here. We're safe, we're home. The first fat drops of rain began to fall as Uncle Robert's truck appeared, heading off the unwelcome visitor. Emily watched until both vehicles disappeared into the gathering storm. Inside the cottage, she lit a lamp against the darkening sky. The small space glowed with warmth, so different from the cold sophistication of the penthouse. Here, surrounded by memories and love, she could feel herself growing stronger. Thunder rolled across the Texas sky as Emily began unpacking boxes of her childhood belongings. Each item was a piece of her true self, the self she'd buried under Mrs. Carter's perfect facade, A worn copy of her favorite novel, its pages dog-eared and loved. A collection of seashells from family trips to the Gulf Coast. A photo album full of genuine smiles and messy happiness. At the bottom of one box, she found her mother's journal. Catherine Bennett's words filled the pages with wisdom and love. Remember, my darling girl, you come from a long line of women who chose their own paths. Never let anyone dim your light. Emily held the journal close, tears mixing with determination. I won't, Mama. Not anymore. The storm raged outside, but inside her cozy cottage, Emily Bennett was building something stronger than the walls of any penthouse. A foundation for a new life. One where she could be herself, where her child would grow up surrounded by real love. And if Liam Carter thought he could storm these walls like he did his corporate takeovers, he was about to learn what real strength looked like. The kind that grew not from power or money, but from knowing exactly who you are and what you deserve. The rain drummed on the roof, nature's lullaby replacing the city's endless noise. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, Emily was exactly where she needed to be, finding her way back to herself. One memory, one choice, one moment of courage at a time. The Cedar Creek Inn was the finest accommodation the small Texas town had to offer, which meant it was the worst place Liam Carter had stayed in 20 years. The air conditioning struggled against the heat, the Wi-Fi was spotty at best, and the coffee maker in his room looked like it belonged in a museum. 5 days had passed since his confrontation with Robert Bennett. 5 days of watching his empire run without him through unreliable internet connections and dropped calls. 5 days of realizing just how powerless he truly was here. Sir? Dean, his driver, knocked on the door. I've got those files you asked for. Liam opened the door, his usual impeccable appearance slightly wilted by the Texas humidity. The local dry cleaner had done their best with his suits, but they weren't equipped for Italian wool and French silk. What did you find? Dean spread several folders on the small room's desk. Everything public record has on Emily's life here. School records, local newspaper articles, community involvement. She was really something. Liam picked up the first folder. A newspaper clipping showed a teenage Emily receiving an award for her volunteer work at the local animal shelter. Her smile was radiant, real. Nothing like the careful, practiced expression she'd worn at his corporate events. There's more, Dean continued. Everyone I talked to had a story about her. How she taught swimming at the community pool every summer. How she organized food drives during hard times. How she helped deliver a neighbor's baby during a snowstorm when the roads were blocked. Enough. Liam's voice was sharp, but his hands were gentle as they touched a photograph of Emily surrounded by laughing children at what appeared to be a county fair. Sir, if I may. Dean hesitated. The locals, they don't hate you because you're rich or because you're from New York. They hate you because they watched her change. Stop smiling, stop helping, stop being Emily. The words hit harder than any corporate takeover ever had. Liam moved to the window, looking out at the dusty main street below. Betty's diner was doing brisk breakfast business, the same people who had blocked his path gathering for their morning coffee. Mr. Carter? His assistant's voice crackled through his laptop. The Beijing merger is stalling. They're demanding your personal attention. Handle it. But sir, I said handle it. The words echoed in the small room. On the street below, several people looked up at his window, their expressions a mixture of disapproval and judgment. His phone buzzed. Another message from his lawyers about forcing access to the Bennett ranch. They had drafted injunctions, restraining orders, every legal document money could buy. But Liam hadn't signed any of them. Robert Bennett's words haunted him. Show us who you are without your money, without your power. Who was he? The question had been gnawing at him since he arrived. In New York, he was Liam Carter, business titan, the man who could buy or crush anything in his path. Here, he was just a man who had broken something precious and didn't know how to fix it. Dean, he said suddenly, what do people do here? Normal people? The driver looked startled. Sir? During the day, when they're not... He gestured vaguely at his laptop, his phone, all the trappings of his usual life. Well, Dean thought for a moment. There's Jack's hardware store. He's looking for help since his son went off to college. The community center always needs volunteers. The Miller farm is short-handed for the harvest. Manual labor? Liam's incredulity was evident. You asked what normal people do. Dean's voice held a challenge. Normal people work with their hands, help their neighbors, build things instead of buying them. Liam looked down at his manicured hands, soft from years of boardrooms and luxury. What had he actually built? His empire was made of acquisitions and hostile takeovers. Even his marriage had been a business transaction, the perfect wife, to complete his perfect image. A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. Betty from the diner stood there holding a paper bag. Breakfast, she said before he could speak. Real food, not that fancy room service mess you've been picking at. I didn't order. Emily used to love my biscuits and gravy. Betty's eyes were sharp, but not unkind. Said they reminded her of home. Of course, that was before you decided she needed to count every calorie and watch every bite. Shame, an unfamiliar emotion, crept up Liam's neck. I was trying to protect her image. No, you were trying to control her. There's a difference. Betty set the bag down. Eat, then maybe take a walk around town. See the place she loved before you made her forget how to love anything. After she left, Liam opened the bag. The smell of real, homemade food filled the room. When was the last time he'd eaten something that wasn't prepared by a celebrity chef or measured by a nutritionist? He took a bite of the biscuits and gravy, and memories flooded back. Emily, in their first year of marriage, trying to recreate her aunt's recipes in their state-of-the-art kitchen. The way he'd dismissed her efforts, insisted on professional catering, told her it wasn't appropriate for his wife to cook. The food turned to ash in his mouth. Outside, the town was coming to life. Shops opening, people greeting each other by name, the kind of community where everyone knew everyone else. The kind of place where a girl like Emily could grow up believing in love and happy endings. The kind of place he had taken her from. Liam changed into the only casual clothes he owned, designer jeans and a polo shirt that still screamed money. It was all wrong, but it was a start. Dean, he called, take me to Jack's hardware store. The next few hours were a revelation. Jack, a gruff man in his 60s, put him to work organizing inventory. The work was mindless, physically demanding, and somehow more exhausting than any corporate negotiation. You're doing it wrong, Jack said, watching Liam struggle with a box of power tools. Been doing it wrong with Emily too, from what I hear. Does everyone in this town know my business? When you hurt one of our own? Yeah, we make it our business. Jack showed him the proper way to lift the box. Emily used to come in here with her uncle, learning how to fix things instead of just replacing them. Had a real talent for it. By midday, Liam's expensive polo was stained with dust and sweat. His back ached, his hands were dirty, and he had accomplished exactly nothing by New York standards. But he had learned the names of 3 regular customers. Had heard stories about Emily's childhood from people who actually knew her, not just the polished society wife she had become. Had felt for the first time what it was like to do something real with his hands. Come back tomorrow if you want, Jack said as Liam prepared to leave. Got plenty more needs doing. Why would you want me back? Jack considered him for a long moment. Because Emily saw something in you worth loving once. And maybe, just maybe, if you get your hands dirty enough, you'll remember what that something was. Back at the inn, Liam ignored the mounting messages from New York. Instead, he sat on his bed looking at his calloused hands and thinking about the girl in the photographs. The one who had believed in helping others, in fixing things, in love. The one he had tried to turn into someone else. His phone buzzed, another legal strategy from his lawyers. He turned it off. Tomorrow, he decided, he would go back to Jack's, would learn the names of more locals, would listen to their stories about the woman he had married but never really known. And maybe, somewhere between the dust and sweat and simple work, he would find the man Emily had once believed he could be. 2 weeks after leaving Manhattan, Emily's morning routine had settled into a comfortable rhythm. Wake at dawn, help Ruby with breakfast for the ranch hands, tend to her small garden at the cottage, then handle the ranch's books, a task that gave her satisfaction Liam could never understand. Real work, honest work. That morning, however, something felt different. The Texas air held an electric charge that had nothing to do with weather. When she stepped onto her cottage porch, coffee in hand, she saw why. Liam was at the gate. But it wasn't the Liam she remembered. Gone were the pristine suits and perfect grooming. He wore worn jeans and a faded work shirt, his hands rough from what looked like manual labor. He stood talking with Miguel, not demanding entry, but waiting. Emily's hand instinctively went to her stomach, now showing the slightest curve. Her child, their child, stirred as if sensing her tension. "He's been coming every morning for a week," Lucia said, appearing beside her with fresh muffins. "Just stands there talking to whoever's on duty. Yesterday he helped fix Miguel's truck." Liam Carter fixed a truck. The words felt foreign in Emily's mouth. "According to Jack at the hardware store, he's been working there. Actually working, not just throwing money around." Lucia studied her friend's face. "The whole town's talking about it." Emily set her coffee down, her hands suddenly unsteady. "He's playing some angle. He always is." "Maybe." Lucia's voice was gentle. "Or maybe he's trying to understand the world that made you who you are, the you he never knew." Before Emily could respond, Uncle Robert's truck pulled up to her cottage. "Your choice, sweetheart," he said through the window. "But if you want to talk to him, we'll all be right here." Emily looked at her reflection in the cottage window. She wore simple clothes now, her face bare of makeup, her hair in a practical braid. No trace remained of Mrs. Carter's polished facade. She was purely Emily Bennett again. "Yes," she decided. "I need to face him." The drive to the gate felt both too long and too short. Emily sat straight in Uncle Robert's truck, one hand protectively over her stomach, the other clenched in her lap. Liam turned as they approached. Their eyes met through the truck's dusty windshield, and Emily's breath caught. There was something different in his gaze, something uncertain and almost human. "I'll be right over there," Uncle Robert said as she stepped down from the truck. One shout, and he's gone. Emily nodded, then walked to the gate. Up close, the changes in Liam were even more striking. His face was tanned from outdoor work, his perfect haircut grown out, his hands calloused and stained. Emily. Her name on his lips sounded different too. Less a possession, more a prayer. "Why are you still here, Liam?" She kept her voice steady. "Your lawyers can't touch this place. Your money means nothing here. What's left for you to control?" He flinched at the word control. I'm not trying to control anything anymore." He ran a hand through his disheveled hair, a gesture she'd never seen before. "I'm trying to understand." "Understand what?" "You. The real you. The one who existed before I..." He struggled with the words. "Before I tried to turn you into something else." Emily's laugh held no humor. "And what have you learned, that I'm just a simple country girl? That I was never meant for your world of power lunches and society galas?" "No." His response was immediate. "I've learned that you were extraordinary, long before you met me. That this place, these people, they didn't make you simple, they made you strong." He gestured to the town beyond. "Everyone here has a story about you. About your kindness, your determination, your heart. The heart I spent 5 years trying to freeze." "Pretty words, Liam." Emily's hand tightened on her stomach. "But words are easy for you. They always have been." His eyes followed her protective gesture. Is the baby okay?" The genuine concern in his voice almost broke her composure. "The baby's fine, growing strong, just like its mother." "Emily, He gripped the gate, knuckles white. "I don't know how to do this. How to be real. But I'm trying. For the first time in my life, I'm trying." "Why?" Because I'm carrying your air? Because I damaged your perfect image by leaving? Because I miss you." The words exploded from him, raw and uncontrolled. Not the wife I created. Not the perfect Mrs. Carter. I miss the way you used to look at me like I could be better than I was. The way you tried to make our house a home before I shut down every attempt. The way you loved me before I taught you not to. Emily's carefully constructed walls trembled. "Don't," she whispered. "I've spent 2 weeks in this town," he continued, his voice rough. "Working at Jack's Hardware, learning names, hearing stories. Yesterday, I helped deliver Mrs. Miller's calf. Me, Liam Carter, up to my elbows in—" He shook his head. "And you know what? It felt real. More real than any deal I've ever closed. What do you want from me, Liam?" "A chance." He met her eyes. "Not to be your husband again. I haven't earned that. Not to control you or the baby. I've learned better. Just a chance to know the real Emily Bennett. The one who taught swimming lessons and organized food drives and believed in helping people instead of using them." Emily studied him, seeing past the surface changes to the battle raging behind his eyes. The mighty Liam Carter, brought low not by corporate raiders or market crashes, but by the simple authenticity of a small Texas town. "I can't trust you," she said finally. "Not yet. Maybe not ever." "I know." He stepped back from the gate. "But I'll be here, working at Jack's, learning to use my hands instead of my wallet, trying to understand the world that shaped you." He paused. "And if you're ready to talk again, I'll be at Betty's Diner every morning at 7. Just to talk. About the baby, about the weather, about anything you want." Emily felt tears threatening. "And if I'm never ready? Then I'll still be grateful for these weeks, for seeing who you really are, even if I had to lose you to do it." He turned to go, then stopped. "You're glowing, you know. Pregnancy suits you. You look free." She watched him walk away, his expensive shoes dusty from the Texas dirt. He moved differently now, without the predatory grace that had once defined him. Instead, he walked like a man carrying a heavy burden, the weight of his own awakening. Uncle Robert's truck pulled up beside her. "You okay, sweetheart?" Emily touched her stomach, feeling her child move beneath her hand. "I don't know," she answered honestly. "He's different." "People can change," her uncle said carefully, "if they want it bad enough. And if they don't?" Emily turned to him, letting her tears fall. "If this is just another corporate strategy, then you're still Emily Bennett, still strong, still loved." He helped her back into the truck. "And that baby of yours will know what real love looks like, whether Liam Carter learns to give it or not." As they drove back to the cottage, Emily watched Liam's figure grow smaller in the side mirror. He didn't look back, didn't try to push for more. Instead, he walked toward town, toward another day of manual labor and small-town life. Either the best performance of his life, or the beginning of real change. Only time would tell which. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Betty's Diner as Emily sat in a corner booth, absently stirring her decaf coffee. 3 days had passed since her confrontation with Liam at the gate, and she'd found herself here, watching him every morning through the window. He came at 7, exactly as promised, ordered plain black coffee, and sat quietly at the counter, never pushing, never demanding. "He's different with the locals now," Betty said, sliding a plate of chicken pot pie in front of Emily. "Doctor's orders. You need the protein." Emily smiled weakly. Her morning sickness had evolved into all-day queasiness, though Doc Reynolds assured her it was normal. "Different how?" "Listens more than he talks. Actually seems interested in people's stories." Betty's shrewd eyes studied Emily's face. "Yesterday, he spent an hour helping old Joe fix his wheelchair ramp. The Liam Carter who first stormed in here would never have touched a hammer." The bell above the door chimed. Lucia entered, covered in dust from the ranch, and slid into the booth across from Emily. Your husband's got quite the fan club forming. Emily raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? The Miller kids adore him. Turns out the big bad billionaire knows magic tricks. Lucia stole a bite of pot pie. And Mrs. Rodriguez says he's been taking Spanish lessons from her grandson. Actually trying to learn, not just throwing money at a tutor. It's an act, Emily insisted, but her voice lacked conviction. It has to be. Does it? Lucia leaned forward. Because Jack says he's never seen anyone work so hard to learn something they're terrible at. Your man's got blisters on top of blisters, but he keeps showing up. Emily's hand went to her stomach, a protective gesture that had become habit. The baby moved, as if responding to her turmoil. He asked about the nursery, Betty mentioned, casually. Not demanding to be involved, just wanted to know if you had everything you needed. I don't want his money, Emily said sharply. Honey, he wasn't offering money. Betty's voice softened. He was asking if you needed help painting. Said he's gotten pretty good at it, working on the community center with Jack. The words hit Emily like physical blows. Each one challenged her carefully constructed image of Liam as the heartless corporate raider who had tried to freeze her soul. I found something, Lucia said quietly, pulling a worn leather notebook from her bag. In the old storage room at the ranch. Thought you should see it. Emily recognized her mother's handwriting immediately. The journal was dated from the year before Catherine Bennett died. Read the marked page, Lucia urged. Emily's hands trembled as she opened to the ribbon bookmark. My darling girl brought home a young man today. Ambitious, driven, wrapped in armor so thick he probably thinks no one can see through it. But I see the way he watches Emily when he thinks no one's looking. The way his carefully constructed walls crack just a little when she laughs. There's a heart in there, buried under years of frost. The question is, will he let her warmth reach it before his cold freezes her fire? Mama saw it, Emily whispered. She saw him, the real him, before I did. Maybe she saw what could be, Lucia suggested. What he's trying to become now. The diner's door chimed again. Liam entered, dusty from work at the hardware store. He nodded politely to Emily but took his usual spot at the counter, respecting her space. Emily watched him interact with the locals. The stiff corporate posture was gone, replaced by something more natural. He laughed at Betty's jokes, discussed the weather with farmers, and demonstrated a card trick for a delighted child. The merger fell through, Lucia said suddenly. The big Beijing deal he was working on. Ruby heard it from her cousin who works at the Business Journal. Emily's heart clenched. What? Apparently, he stopped taking calls from his team, told them to handle it or let it go. Lucia watched Emily's face carefully. $5 billion up in smoke, because he chose to stay here, working for minimum wage at a hardware store. That's not like him. Emily's voice was barely a whisper. No, Betty agreed. It's not like the him you left, but maybe it's like the him he's trying to become. Through the diner's window, Emily could see the town coming, alive with evening activity. Families heading to the community center, teenagers gathering at the ice cream parlor, ranchers finishing their day's work. This small, interconnected world that had shaped her, that was now reshaping the man she'd left. He asks about you, Betty said softly. Not prying, just genuine questions. About your childhood, your dreams before he made you pack them away. Yesterday, he spent an hour looking at the old photos on my wall, studying everyone you're in, like he's trying to understand who you were before he tried to change you. Emily remembered their first date, years ago, how Liam had seemed almost shy when he asked about her volunteer work. How he'd listened, really listened, before the corporate world convinced him that such things were beneath him. I'm scared, she admitted, one hand protectively over her child. Not of him exactly, but of hoping, of believing he can change, only to have him become himself again, Lucia finished. The thing is, I don't think he knows who himself is anymore. That's why he's here, doing honest work, learning to be human. The sun was setting, painting Cedar Creek's main street in shades of gold and pink. Liam stood to leave, leaving cash for his coffee and a generous tip that would have been ostentatious a few weeks ago but now seemed natural, community-minded. He caught Emily's eye as he turned. For a moment his carefully maintained distance cracked, and she saw something raw and real in his expression. Longing, regret, and something that might have been hope. Then he was gone, walking not toward the fancy inn but toward the small apartment above Jack's store where he'd moved last week. The mighty Liam Carter choosing a shabby room with unreliable air conditioning over luxury. "Your mother wrote something else," Lucia said, turning to another marked page in the journal. "The day after she met him. Want to hear it?" Emily nodded, unable to speak. Sometimes the strongest people are the ones most afraid of love. They build walls so high they forget how to climb down. But if someone is patient enough, brave enough to show them another way, well, that's how hearts thaw. Not all at once in a dramatic flood, but slowly, drop by drop until spring comes at last. Emily's vision blurred with tears. Mama always did see right through people. "She saw you too," Lucia pointed out. "Saw your strength, your capacity for love, your ability to help others heal. Maybe that's why she trusted you with him." "I failed." The words tasted bitter. "Did you?" Betty joined them, sitting in the booth. "Or did it just take longer than you expected? Sometimes a seed needs winter's frost before it can bloom in spring." Outside, the Texas night was falling. Through the window, Emily could see Liam's figure under a streetlight, helping Mrs. Miller with her groceries. No cameras, no audience, no one to impress, just a man learning, step by step, how to be part of something bigger than himself. "I'm not ready," she said finally. "To trust, to hope, to let him in. No one's asking you to be." Lucia squeezed her hand. "But maybe, just maybe it's okay to watch, to wait, to see if this new Liam, the one who fixes porches and learns magic tricks and chooses small-town life over corporate empires, is real." Emily touched her mother's journal, feeling the echo of Catherine Bennett's wisdom across the years. "Drop by drop," she whispered, "until spring comes at last." The baby moved again as if in agreement. Outside, life in Cedar Creek continued its gentle rhythm, healing hearts one small kindness at a time. The Texas summer storm came without warning. One moment, Emily was checking the ranch's fence line with Uncle Robert. The next, the sky turned an ominous green-black. The air grew thick with electricity, and the horses in the nearby pasture grew restless. "We need to head back," Uncle Robert said, eyeing the approaching wall of clouds. "This is going to be a bad one." They were still a mile from the main house when the first drops fell. Within seconds, the rain became a deluge. Lightning split the sky, followed immediately by thunder that made their truck shudder. Emily's hands tightened on the steering wheel. At 5 months pregnant, her belly was clearly visible now, and the baby was particularly active during storms. A sharp pain shot through her abdomen, making her gasp. "Emily?" Uncle Robert's voice was sharp with concern. "I'm fine," she managed, but another cramp hit stronger this time. The world swam before her eyes. "Pull over, now!" She barely managed to stop the truck before another wave of pain crashed over her. Through the rain-streaked windshield, she could see debris flying past. Branches, leaves, pieces of metal roofing torn loose by the wind. "The baby," she whispered, panic rising in her throat. "Something's wrong." Uncle Robert was already on his phone, but the storm was interfering with the signal. "Doc Reynolds isn't answering. We need to get you to the hospital in Austin." "That's 2 hours away." The words ended in a cry of pain. "Cedar Creek Medical Center," he decided. "It's closer. They can at least stabilize you." But when he tried to start the truck, the engine merely clicked. Lightning had fried something in the electrical system. "I'll walk to the ranch, get another vehicle," he said, but Emily grabbed his arm. "Don't leave me," she pleaded, another contraction racking her body. This couldn't be happening. It was too early. The storm's fury increased. Their truck rocked with each gust of wind. Uncle Robert tried the radio hoping to reach someone at the ranch but got only static. Then through the sheets of rain, headlights appeared. A vehicle was approaching slowly, carefully navigating the flooded road. Uncle Robert stepped out into the storm, waving his arms. The approaching car stopped, and a familiar figure emerged. Liam. He was soaked instantly, his work clothes clinging to him as he ran to their truck. One look at Emily's face told him everything. How far apart are the contractions? His voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed his fear. Too close, Emily managed between pained breaths. It's too early, Liam. Our baby. We need to get her to the medical center, Uncle Robert said. But the truck's dead. Liam was already moving, opening Emily's door. My car's running. It's higher off the ground, better chance of making it through the floodwaters. Together, the men helped Emily into Liam's SUV. It wasn't his original luxury rental, but an older model he'd bought from Jack's cousin, more practical for Texas back roads. I'm coming with you, Uncle Robert started, but Liam cut him off. The ranch will need you. This storm's going to cause damage. Get back there. Let everyone know where we're going. Send Doc Reynolds to the medical center when you reach her. For a moment, the two men stared at each other through the rain. Then Uncle Robert nodded. He understood. This was something Liam needed to do, needed to prove. Take care of them, he said simply. Liam's response was fierce. With my life. The drive to Cedar Creek Medical Center should have taken 30 minutes. But the storm had flooded roads, brought down trees, and turned simple streets into obstacle courses. Liam navigated carefully, one hand on the wheel, the other gripping Emily's hand as she fought through contractions. Talk to me, he said as they took another detour around a fallen power line. Remember our first date? Emily managed a weak laugh that turned into a groan. You took me to that ridiculous 5-star restaurant, and you hated every minute of it. His thumb stroked her palm as another contraction hit, but you were too polite to say anything. Until, she gasped for breath, until you found me in the kitchen talking to the dishwasher about his daughter's college fund. You ended up organizing a scholarship fund for the staff's children. Liam's voice was soft with memory. That's when I started falling in love with you, and when I started getting scared. Scared? Emily turned to look at him through pain-blurred eyes. Of feeling that much, of needing someone that much. He swerved around a flooding dip in the road. So I did what I always did, tried to control it. Control you. Turn you into something safe. Liam, whether from pain or emotion, tears streaked her face. I was wrong, he continued, his voice raw. So wrong. You were perfect exactly as you were. Perfect in your kindness, your realness, your heart. And I almost destroyed all of that because I was too much of a coward to. A massive contraction cut off their conversation. Emily cried out, her hand crushing his. We're almost there, he promised. Hold on, love, both of you, hold on. The medical center appeared through the rain like a beacon. Liam pulled up to the emergency entrance where staff were already waiting. Uncle Robert must have gotten through to someone. Everything happened in a blur after that. Emily was whisked away on a gurney, leaving Liam standing in the waiting room, soaked and shaking. He'd never felt so helpless in his life. Hours passed. The storm raged outside while Liam paced, prayed, and promised every deity he knew that he'd spend the rest of his life making up for his mistakes if they'd just let Emily and their child be okay. Finally, Doc Reynolds arrived, having braved the storm as soon as she got the message. She disappeared into the emergency department without a word to Liam. More waiting, more pacing, more prayers from a man who'd never believed in anything but himself. When Doc Reynolds finally emerged, her face was grave. The baby's in distress. Emily's blood pressure is dangerously high. They're preparing for an emergency C-section. Can I? Liam's voice broke. Can I see her? The doctor studied him for a long moment. 2 minutes. That's all I can give you. Emily lay pale against the hospital sheets, monitors beeping around her. When Liam entered, her eyes found his immediately. I'm sorry, they both said at once. No. Liam moved to her side, taking her hand. You have nothing to be sorry for. I'm the one who... God, Emily, I wasted so many years trying to change the most beautiful thing in my life instead of changing myself. Liam, she whispered, if anything happens, nothing's going to happen. His voice was fierce. You're the strongest person I know. You and our baby are going to be fine. And then I'll spend the rest of my life proving I can be worthy of you. Not with money or power or any of that meaningless garbage, but with love, with trust, with everything I should have given you from the start. Tears slid down Emily's temples. I'm scared. Me too. He pressed his forehead to hers. But you taught me something these past weeks. Sometimes being strong means admitting you're scared. Sometimes love means letting go of control. The medical team entered, ready to take Emily to surgery. As they prepared to separate them, Emily gripped Liam's hand. Stay, she whispered. Please stay. Wild horses couldn't drag me away, he promised. I'm done running from love. As they wheeled Emily away, Liam stood in the hallway, his heart beating in time with the storm outside. Everything he'd ever truly wanted hung in the balance, and for once in his life, no amount of money or power could guarantee the outcome. All he could do was wait and hope and pray that he hadn't realized the truth too late. Dawn broke over Cedar Creek Medical Center, the storm finally exhausted after raging through the night. Liam stood at the window of Emily's hospital room, watching the sun paint the rain-washed world in shades of gold. Behind him, 2 heartbeat monitors beeped steadily. One for Emily, still sleeping off the surgery, and one for their tiny daughter, safely delivered despite arriving weeks early. Mr. Carter? A nurse entered quietly. Your daughter's ready for her morning feeding. Liam turned from the window as they wheeled in the clear hospital bassinet. Inside, wrapped in a soft pink blanket, lay Catherine Rose Carter, named for the grandmother who had seen through Liam's walls before anyone else. Emily should wake soon, the nurse said, checking vital signs. The medication's wearing off. Liam approached the bassinet, still amazed by how something so small could completely reshape his world. Catherine's tiny fingers wrapped around his calloused thumb, hands rough now from honest work instead of smooth from boardroom battles. Tell me again. Emily's voice, weak but clear, came from the bed. What happened after they took me to surgery? Liam moved to sit beside her, keeping one hand connected to their daughter. He'd told this story 3 times since she'd first awakened, but he understood her need to hear it again. The surgery was complicated, he said softly. Your blood? Pressure kept spiking. Doc Reynolds said, she said we might lose you both. His voice cracked at the memory. I've never been so scared in my life. Not when I made my first million, not when I lost my first billion. Nothing compared to the thought of losing you. Emily's hand found his, squeezing weakly. But you stayed. Of course I stayed. I'm done running. He brought her hand to his lips. I stood in that waiting room making deals with God. Promised I'd give away every penny I own if you'd both be safe. Swore I'd spend the rest of my life being the man you deserved instead of the man I thought I had to be. And then Doc Reynolds came out crying and smiling at the same time. Said our little girl was a fighter just like her mama. Said you'd both pulled through. He smiled at the memory. Uncle Robert burst in right after. Turned out the whole town was in the waiting room. Betty had brought food. Jack closed the hardware store early. Even Mrs. Miller's kids were there with get-well cards they'd made in the storm. Tears slid down Emily's cheeks. Our daughter was born into love. The kind of love I never understood before. Liam helped Emily sit up, slightly, then lifted Catherine from her bassinet. The kind that's not about possession or appearance or control. The kind that's about community and sacrifice and choosing each other every day. As he placed their daughter in Emily's arms, the morning sun streamed through the window, catching the simple gold band he now wore on his right hand, not his Old wedding ring, but one he'd bought from Jack's brother, the local jeweler. A symbol not of ownership, but of promise. I filed the papers yesterday, he said quietly. Transferred control of Carter Enterprises to the board. Kept enough shares to ensure our daughter's future, but he took a deep breath. I bought the old Miller place instead, the ranch that borders your uncle's land. Emily's eyes widened. Liam, I'm not asking to move in with you, he added quickly. I know we have a long way to go, but I want to be close. Want to learn ranching from the ground up. Want our daughter to grow up knowing both sides of her heritage. Not just the power and privilege, but the strength and community that made her mother who she is. What about your empire? Emily adjusted Catherine gently as she began to fuss. Your life in New York? That wasn't living, that was existing. He watched as she began to feed their daughter. These past weeks in Cedar Creek taught me more about real success than 20 years in Manhattan. Success isn't about what you own. It's about who you become. A knock at the door interrupted them. Uncle Robert entered, followed by Aunt Ruby, carrying an enormous basket of food. The waiting room's full again, Ruby announced, setting down her burden. Whole town's been praying for all three of you. They can come in if Emily's feeling up to it, Liam suggested. They're family too, in their own way. Emily's eyes filled with fresh tears at his words. You really have changed. No, he corrected gently. I've remembered the man I was before ambition froze my heart. The man your mother saw possibility in, the man you loved before I taught you not to. Ruby began organizing the room, setting out fresh flowers and arranging food on the small table. Uncle Robert moved to the window, giving them space while keeping watch like he'd done Emily's whole life. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Liam continued. Not yet. I haven't earned it. But I'm asking for a chance to be a father to our daughter. A chance to show you day by day that my love for you is stronger than my fear of feeling it. Catherine had fallen asleep at Emily's breast, tiny fingers curled against her mother's skin. In her face, Liam could see both of them, Emily's gentle strength, his stubborn determination. I can't promise it will be easy, Emily said finally. Learning to trust again. It's like learning to breathe after being underwater for so long. Then we'll take it one breath at a time. He touched Catherine's downy head. One day at a time, I'm not going anywhere. The door opened again, and faces appeared. Betty with more food, Jack with a handmade cradle he'd been working on in secret, Lucia with tears and smiles. The room filled with the warmth of community, of family chosen and earned. Well? Betty demanded, hands on her hips. Does our newest citizen have a name? Catherine Rose Carter, Emily announced. The room fell silent at the name, understanding its significance. After my mother who saw the truth in both our hearts. Perfect name for a Texas rose, Ruby approved, wiping her eyes. As the room filled with gentle conversation and loving presences, Liam stood by Emily's bed, one hand on their daughter, the other holding Emily's fingers. Outside, Cedar Creek was coming back to life after the storm. He could see Jack's hardware, from the window, the community center where he'd learned to value service over power, the diner where he'd learned to listen instead of command. Emily, he said softly, for her ears alone. I know we have to start over, build something new from the ashes of what I burned, but I want you to know, the man you met that first night, the one who listened to your dreams before he forgot how to hear them, he's back, and this time he's here to stay. Emily looked up at him, really looked at him, perhaps for the first time since she'd fled Manhattan. She saw the changes in his face, not just the tan and the harder muscles, from physical work but something deeper. The frost in his eyes had melted, replaced by warmth and humility and hope. One day at a time, she agreed, and shifted Catherine slightly, making room for him to sit beside them. Above them, the Texas sun blessed the scene with golden light, while all around them love bloomed like wildflowers after rain, resilient, beautiful, and completely free. If you were Emily after seeing Liam's genuine transformation, From powerful, controlling billionaire to a humble man working in a hardware store, would you give him a second chance? Or are some wounds too deep to heal, even when love still exists? Leave your opinion in the comments. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to our channel and leave a comment below letting us know what you thought. Your feedback and support mean a lot to us. Stay tuned for more exciting stories.